The Galactic Council chamber was huge. It stretched out like a giant bowl with rows of seats going up and up until they almost touched the ceiling. 12 different alien species sat in their special sections, each group looking very different from the others. Some had scales, some had fur, and some looked like they were made of crystal or metal. In the center of this massive room stood a single figure. Ambassador Zethkar looked tired and scared. His reptile-like skin was a dull green color, and his long tail dragged behind him as he walked to the speaking platform. His hands shook as he gripped the metal edges of the podium. The room was not quiet. Different aliens were talking to each other in their own languages. Some were laughing. Others were making clicking sounds or strange musical notes. The translation devices that everyone wore were working hard to turn all these sounds into words everyone could understand. Zethkar raised one clawed hand into the air. Slowly, the noise died down. All eyes turned to look at him. He was from the Vraxan Empire, one of the biggest and strongest military powers in the galaxy. Everyone knew the Vraxans were tough fighters who controlled hundreds of star systems. "Friends and fellow council members," Zethkar began. His voice was rough like rocks grinding together. "I come here today with news that will shock you. I come here not as a proud representative of my empire, but as the last survivor of a terrible mistake." A few aliens in the crowd made sounds of confusion. The Korthic delegate, a huge creature with 4 arms and rock-like skin, stood up from his seat. General Vexthul was known for being aggressive and rude. His species had been fighting wars for thousands of years. "What are you talking about, Snake?" General Vexthul said in a voice that sounded like boulders falling down a mountain. "The Vraxan Empire is strong. You control more ships than any other species except us. What mistake could be so terrible?" Zethkar's yellow eyes looked directly at the general. "The mistake was attacking the humans." Silence fell over the chamber like a heavy blanket. Then, after a few seconds, laughter began. It started with just 1 or 2 aliens, then spread through the room like a wave. The laughter was loud and mean. Many of the delegates thought this was the funniest thing they had heard in years. General Vexthul was laughing so hard that his forearms slapped his knees. "The humans," he gasped between laughs. "Those little pink creatures from that tiny blue planet. They barely learned how to travel between stars 10 years ago. My youngest soldiers could defeat their entire military without breaking a sweat." Other aliens joined in with their own comments. The Silurian delegate, whose body looked like it was made of living diamond, made a sound like wind chimes. "The humans have maybe 50 ships total," she said. "We have tens of thousands. How could they possibly threaten anyone?" But Zethkar did not laugh. He did not smile. He just stood there looking old and broken. When the laughter finally died down, he spoke again. "3 months ago, my emperor decided that the humans were taking up too much space. There is a star system called Kepler that has valuable metals and crystals. The humans built a small mining station there. Emperor Vashitar wanted those resources for our empire." He paused and looked around the room. "So he sent a message to the human leaders. He told them to leave the Kepler system immediately, or face the consequences. The humans sent back a polite message saying they had the legal right to be there and would not leave." General Vexthul snorted, which sounded like a rock slide. "Typical human stupidity. They think their little laws and papers mean something. In the real galaxy." "What did your emperor do next?" Zethkar's voice became very quiet. "He sent the first fleet to remove them by force. 15,000 ships. The pride of our military. Admiral Kreshevar was in command, our best naval officer. They were ordered to destroy the human station and capture the system." The chamber became quiet again, but this time it was not a respectful quiet. It was the kind of quiet that comes before bad news. "And?" prompted Counselor Nathara, the crystal being whose voice sounded like singing. "Not one ship came back," Zethkar said simply. The silence stretched on for long seconds. Then General Vexthul spoke, his voice not as confident as before. "What do you mean, not one ship came back? Did they get lost? Did their engines break down?" "I mean," Zethkar said, turning to face the general directly, that 15,000 Vraxan warships encountered one small human mining station and 3 tiny patrol boats. When the battle was over, all 15,000 of our ships were destroyed or disabled. Not one survived to return home. This time, nobody laughed. In a small section near the back of the chamber, the human delegation sat quietly. There were only 5 humans in the entire Galactic Council, representing a species that most aliens still thought of as newcomers and primitives. Commander Lisa Grant was the leader of the human military representatives. She was in her 50s, with gray hair and lines around her eyes from years of service. Her uniform was simple and plain compared to the fancy clothes and armor that other species wore. Next to her sat Captain Jake Morrison, a younger man with brown hair who kept looking around the room with careful eyes. The other 3 humans were diplomats and scientists. Dr. Helen Carter was the chief human ambassador, an older woman with kind eyes who always spoke softly. Next to her was Dr. Paul Stevens, a scientist who studied alien technology. And finally, there was Lieutenant Betty Walsh, a young military officer who took notes on everything. Commander Grant leaned over to Captain Morrison and whispered, "They still don't believe him." Morrison nodded slightly. "Would you? If someone told you that a handful of humans destroyed 15,000 enemy ships, would you believe it?" Dr. Carter heard them talking and turned around. "The truth often sounds impossible until you see it with your own eyes," she said quietly. Back at the center podium, Zethkar was trying to convince the other delegates that he was telling the truth, but most of them still thought he was lying. "Or crazy." "This is impossible," declared Ambassador Frexwin of the Hegemony Coalition. His species looked like giant insects with multiple eyes. "Humans are primitives. They have no advanced weapons. They have no powerful shields. Their ships are tiny and weak. How could they possibly defeat 15,000 Vraxan warships?" "That is exactly what Emperor Vashitar thought," Zethkar replied. "That is exactly what Admiral Kreshevar thought. That is exactly what I thought when I heard the reports." He activated a holographic display that showed a map of the galaxy. A small section was highlighted in red. The Vraxan Empire used to control all of this territory. 300 star systems, billions of citizens, the second most powerful military force in known space. The red area on the map suddenly became much smaller, showing only a handful of systems around the Vraxan homeworld. This is what remains of our empire today. When the first fleet did not return, Emperor Vashitar sent the second fleet to investigate. 12,000 ships. They also did not return. Then he sent the third fleet, our final reserve of 8,000 vessels. Zethkar's voice became very soft. "I was with the third fleet. I was the only survivor." The chamber was completely silent now. Even the translator devices seemed to be holding their breath. What I saw there changed everything I thought I knew about warfare, about power, and about the species we call human. That is why I am here today, speaking to all of you with words that may save your civilizations from making the same terrible mistake. He looked directly at General Vexthul. "Do not go to war with the humans, not because they will destroy you, but because they will make you destroy yourselves." The next 3 days were filled with angry arguments and heated debates. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with activity as different alien species gathered in small groups to talk about what Ambassador Zethkar had told them. Most of them still did not believe his story about the humans destroying the Vraxan Empire. General Vexthul stood in the center of a group of military officers from different species. His 4 rocky arms moved as he talked, and his voice carried across the chamber. "The snake is lying," he said loudly. "Or maybe he has gone crazy. There is no way that primitive humans could defeat our technology." Around him, other military leaders nodded their heads in agreement. Commander Zixtal of the Nebula Federation clicked his metal claws together. His species looked like robots, but they were actually living beings made of organic metal. "Our intelligence reports show that humans have only basic weapons," he said in a voice that sounded like gears turning. "Their ships are slow and their armor is weak." Admiral Corthes of the Deep Space Alliance made a sound like whale song. Her species lived in the ocean worlds and had to wear special water suits to attend the council meetings. Even if the humans had secret weapons, they could not hide them from our spy networks. We have been watching Earth for decades. But not everyone was so sure. Some of the older and wiser delegates had noticed things that the military leaders missed. Counselor Nathara, the crystal being, sat quietly in her chair and listened to all the arguments. Her diamond-like body reflected the lights in the chamber, creating rainbow patterns on the walls. "There is something strange about this situation," she said during one of the debates. "If Zethkar is lying, what does he gain from it? The Vraxan Empire was proud and strong. Why would their ambassador pretend to be weak and defeated?" Scholar Venthiron of the academic collective agreed with her. His species looked like tall, thin humans with blue skin and large eyes. They were known throughout the galaxy for being very smart and logical. "Also," he added, "we have not received any communications from the Vraxan Empire in 2 months. Their trade ships have stopped coming to our markets. Their diplomatic messages have stopped arriving." This made some of the other delegates pause and think. The Vraxan Empire had always been very active in galactic politics and trade. For them to suddenly become silent was indeed strange. In their small section of the chamber, the human delegation watched and listened to everything. Commander Lisa Grant took notes in a small electronic pad. Captain Jake Morrison kept his eyes on the different alien groups, watching their body language and reactions. Dr. Helen Carter, the chief human diplomat, sat calmly with her hands folded in her lap. Dr. Paul Stevens, the human scientist, leaned over to Dr. Carter and whispered, "They are starting to ask the right questions. Some of them are beginning to wonder if Zethkar might be telling the truth." Dr. Carter nodded slightly. "Truth has a way of coming out, no matter how impossible it seems at first." Lieutenant Betty Walsh, the young military officer, looked worried. "What if they decide to test his claims? What if one of these species decides to attack us to see if we really are dangerous?" Commander Grant overheard her question. "Then we will deal with that situation when it comes," she said quietly. "For now, we wait and watch." On the 4th day of debates, Dr. Carter stood up from her seat. This was unusual because the humans rarely spoke during council meetings. Most of the time they just listened and took notes. When other delegates saw her standing, the chamber gradually became quiet. "Honorable members of the Galactic Council," Dr. Carter said in her calm, gentle voice, "I request permission to address the assembly." The council speaker, a tall alien with purple skin and no hair, nodded his head. "The human delegation is recognized. You may speak, Dr. Carter." Dr. Carter walked down to the center of the chamber where the main speaking platform was located. She moved slowly and carefully, like someone's grandmother going for a walk in the park. Her simple blue dress and gray hair made her look very ordinary compared to the exotic aliens around her. "Thank you," she said when she reached the podium. "I want to talk about what Ambassador Zethkar told us 4 days ago. Many of you do not believe his story. That is understandable. What he described does sound impossible." General Vex Thule stood up in his section. Finally, the humans speak. "Tell us, old woman, what really happened to the Vraxan fleets? Did you hide behind some asteroid field while they destroyed each other?" Dr. Carter looked at the general with patient eyes. "General, I understand your skepticism. However, I must correct one important point in Ambassador Zethkar's testimony. He said that humanity destroyed the Vraxan Empire. That is not accurate." The chamber became very quiet. Even Zethkar, who had been sitting silently in the Vraxan section, looked up with surprise. "We did not destroy the Vraxan Empire," Dr. Carter continued. "We defended ourselves when they attacked our lawful colonies. There is a very important difference between destruction and defense." Commander Zixtal of the Nebula Federation made his gear-turning sound. "Defense? How does a species with 50 ships defend against 15,000 enemy vessels?" Dr. Carter smiled slightly. "That is an excellent question, Commander. However, I am not authorized to discuss military capabilities in an open forum like this. Such information is classified by our government." This caused an uproar in the chamber. Aliens began talking loudly to each other. Some were angry, some were curious, and some were suspicious. General Vex Thule's voice boomed over the noise. Classified? You primitives think you have military secrets worth hiding? What could you possibly have that we do not already know about? Before Dr. Carter could answer, Ambassador Zethkar suddenly stood up from his seat. His reptilian face looked desperate and frightened. "Please," he called out, his voice carrying over the crowd noise. "Please let me show them the recordings." The chamber became quiet again. All eyes turned to look at the Vraxan ambassador. "What recordings?" asked the council speaker. Zethkar's hands were shaking as he activated a small device. "I have sensor data from our ships. I have communication records. I have video footage of what happened in the Kepler system. If the humans give permission, I can show the council exactly what occurred." Dr. Carter looked at Zethkar for a long moment. Then she looked around the chamber at all the different alien faces watching her. Finally, she nodded her head. "Very well," she said. "Ambassador Zethkar has our permission to share his records with the council. Perhaps seeing the events will help everyone understand the situation better." Zethkar moved quickly to the chamber's main display system. His clawed fingers worked on the control panel, calling up files from his personal data storage. The huge holographic projector in the center of the room began to glow. "What you are about to see," Zethkar said to the assembled delegates, "is exactly what happened when the first Vraxan fleet encountered the human mining station in the Kepler system. I warn you that some of what you will witness may be difficult to believe." The holographic display activated, showing a three-dimensional view of space. Stars twinkled in the background, and in the center of the image was a small, simple-looking structure. It was clearly a human mining station, with basic metal walls and simple design. Around it floated several automated mining platforms, slowly working on nearby asteroids. "This is Kepler Mining Station 7, Zethkar explained. "As you can see, there was nothing impressive about it, just a basic facility with standard human technology." Then, at the edge of the display, new shapes began to appear. First dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of massive warships dropped out of hyperspace. The Vraxan fleet was enormous, stretching out in all directions around the tiny human station. Each Vraxan ship was 10 times larger than the entire mining facility. 15,000 ships, Zethkar said quietly. "The pride of our empire, against one small station and 3 patrol vessels." The recording began to play, and the council chamber fell completely silent as they watched the impossible events that followed. The holographic display showed the vast Vraxan fleet surrounding the small human mining station. The size difference was shocking. Each Vraxan warship looked like a giant metal mountain floating in space, covered with weapons and armor. The human station looked like a tiny metal can next to them. In the Galactic Council chamber, every alien delegate leaned forward in their seats. Even the most skeptical among them had to admit that this looked like an impossible fight. How could one small station survive against 15,000 enemy ships? The recording continued. A communication channel opened, and the image of a Vraxan admiral appeared on the display. Admiral Kreshivar was a typical member of his species, with dark green scales and yellow eyes that glowed with anger. His uniform was covered with medals and symbols of rank. "Human facility," the admiral's voice came through clearly. "This is Admiral Kreshivar of the 1st Vraxan Fleet. You are ordered to evacuate this system immediately. The Kepler system now belongs to the Vraxan Empire. You have 30 minutes to gather your people and leave." The response came from inside the mining station. A middle-aged human man appeared on the communication screen. He had kind eyes and graying hair at his temples. His simple work clothes made him look like an ordinary factory worker, not a military commander. "This is Commander Pete Sullivan of Kepler Mining Station 7, the human replied. His voice was calm and polite. "Admiral, we appreciate your visit, but this system was legally claimed under Galactic Commerce Regulation 2847. We have all the proper permits and documents. We are not planning to leave." Admiral Kreshivar's eyes flashed with anger. "Legal claims mean nothing when facing the might of the Vraxan Empire. This is your final warning, human. Leave now or face the consequences." Commander Sullivan sighed, like a teacher dealing with a difficult student. "Admiral, I really wish you would reconsider. We do not want any trouble, but we cannot abandon our legal rights just because you ask us to." In the council chamber, General Vex Thule made a sound like rocks grinding together. "Look at this fool," he said to the other delegates. "He talks about legal rights when facing 15,000 warships. Humans are even more stupid than I thought." But Ambassador Zethkar, who was controlling the recording, shook his head. "Watch carefully," he said. "This is where everything changed." The recording continued. Admiral Kreshevar had clearly lost his patience with the polite human commander. "You want to discuss legal rights? Then discuss them with our weapons. All ships prepare to fire. Destroy that station and everything around it." The massive Vraxan fleet began to move into attack position. Thousands of weapons turned toward the small mining station. Plasma cannons charged with deadly energy. Missile tubes opened and prepared to launch. The space around the station began to glow with the heat from so many weapon systems powering up. Commander Sullivan watched all of this happening on his own sensors. But instead of panicking or begging for mercy, he did something completely unexpected. He smiled. "Admiral," Commander Sullivan said, "I have been authorized to show you something. Please tell your fleet to hold their current positions for exactly 60 seconds. If you do this, no harm will come to any of your ships." Admiral Kreshevar stared at the human commander like he was looking at a crazy person. "You dare to make demands of me? You threaten my fleet? Human, you face the combined firepower of 15,000 ships. What could you possibly do to harm us?" Commander Sullivan's expression became sad, like a parent who was disappointed in their child. "Admiral, I am not threatening you. I am trying to save the lives of your crews. Please just wait 60 seconds and let me demonstrate our defensive systems. Then you can decide if you still want to attack." The Vraxan Admiral's laugh was harsh and cruel. "Defensive systems? Against 15,000 ships? Human, your arrogance will be the death of you. All ships, weapons free. Fire at will. Destroy that station." What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations to come. The first wave of plasma fire erupted from the Vraxan fleet. Hundreds of bright energy beams streaked through space toward the mining station. At the same time, thousands of missiles launched from the warships, their trails creating beautiful but deadly patterns against the stars. The human station should have been vaporized instantly. The amount of firepower heading toward it was enough to destroy a small moon. But as the weapons approached the station, something impossible happened. The space around the mining facility began to shimmer and bend, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. The energy beams and missiles hit this shimmering area and suddenly changed direction. Instead of hitting the station, they curved around it in smooth arcs and headed back toward the ships that had fired them. In the council chamber, gasps and sounds of amazement came from many different species. Counselor Nethara, the crystal being, made a sound like wind chimes. "Impossible," she whispered. "They are bending space itself." The recording continued as the returned weapons struck the Vraxan fleet. The massive warships had been designed to fight enemies in front of them, not behind them. Their thick armor faced forward, but their rear sections were much more vulnerable. As their own plasma beams and missiles hit them from behind, explosion after explosion lit up the space around the mining station. Ships that had taken centuries to build were destroyed in seconds by their own weapons. Thousands of Vraxan sailors died as their vessels broke apart under the impact of their own firepower. Admiral Kreshevar's panicked voice filled the communication channels. All ships, cease fire immediately. Stop shooting. How are they doing this?" Commander Sullivan's voice came back, still calm and patient. "Admiral, we tried to warn you. Our defensive systems do not destroy your ships. They simply return whatever you send to us. The harder you attack us, the harder you attack yourselves." The holographic display showed the aftermath of the first exchange. Of the original 15,000 Vraxan ships, nearly half had been destroyed or badly damaged. The survivors floated in space, their crews too shocked to move or think clearly. "This is impossible," Admiral Kreshevar said, his voice shaking. "No species has this technology. You cannot manipulate gravity on this scale. Commander Sullivan appeared on the communication screen again. His expression was gentle but sad. Admiral, we have been studying physics for a very long time. We learned that the best defense is not building bigger weapons, but making enemy weapons work against themselves. In the council chamber, the delegates sat in stunned silence. General Vexthol's forearms trembled as he watched the recording. His species had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war, and now he was seeing all of that knowledge made useless by human science. Dr. Helen Carter, the human diplomat, spoke quietly from her seat. We did not want this fight. We tried to avoid it, but when someone attacks our people, we defend ourselves. The recording continued as Admiral Kreshevar tried to understand what had happened to his fleet. Human, he said, you have destroyed half of my ships through some kind of trick, but this changes nothing. The second and third fleets are already on their way to your homeworld. Even if you can defend this one station, you cannot protect your entire planet. Commander Sullivan's response was patient, but firm. Admiral, what you call a trick we call physics, and if you attack Earth, you will discover that we have had much more time to prepare our defenses there. The Vraxan Admiral's eyes glowed with rage. We shall see, human. Emperor Vashishtar will not be defeated by primitives and their parlor tricks. Your species will pay for this insult with extinction. The communication ended, and the recording showed the surviving Vraxan ships limping away from the mining station. But instead of returning to their home territory, they headed toward a different destination. The display showed their course leading directly toward Earth. Ambassador Zethkar paused the recording and looked around the council chamber. That was just the beginning, he said quietly. What you saw here was the destruction of our first fleet. But Emperor Vashishtar was not finished. He sent 40,000 more ships to attack the human homeworld. The chamber was completely silent. Every delegate was trying to process what they had just witnessed. The humans had not just defended themselves against impossible odds. They had done it without firing a single aggressive shot. They had turned the Vraxan Empire's own strength against itself. Dr. Carter stood up from her seat again. The second and third fleets did reach Earth, she said calmly. Would the council like to see what happened there as well? The council chamber remained completely silent as Ambassador Zethkar prepared to show the second recording. His clawed hands moved over the control panel, and the holographic display changed to show a new scene. This time, instead of a small, mining station, the image showed Earth itself floating peacefully in the darkness of space. The blue and green planet looked beautiful and calm. White clouds swirled over the continents, and the ocean sparkled with reflected sunlight. It was hard to believe that this quiet world could be the target of the largest military attack in galactic history. This recording was made 6 weeks ago, Zethkar explained to the watching delegates. After the first fleet was destroyed at the mining station, Emperor Vashishtar became very angry. He decided that the entire human species must be punished for what they had done. The display showed empty space around Earth, with only a few small human ships moving between the planet and its moon. Everything looked normal and peaceful. Then, at the edge of the solar system, something began to happen. Small points of light started appearing in the darkness. First just a few, then dozens, then hundreds. As the recording zoomed out to show a wider view, the true scale of what was arriving became clear. Ships were dropping out of hyperspace by the thousands, forming into massive formations that stretched across space like metal clouds. The second and third fleets, Zethkar said quietly. 40,000 ships, the largest military force ever, assembled in our history. Every available vessel from across the Vraxan Empire. In the council chamber, even the most warlike delegates looked impressed by the size of the fleet. General Vexthul counted the ship formations with his forearms, his rocky face showing amazement. 40,000 ships, he muttered. We Korthak have never built a fleet even half that size. The recording continued as the massive Vraxan armada moved into position around Earth. The planet looked like a small blue marble surrounded by an enormous swarm of angry metal wasps. Each ship was huge, bristling with weapons and armor. Together, they carried enough firepower to turn entire planets into dust. A communication channel opened, and a new figure appeared on the display. This was not just any Vraxan admiral, but Emperor Vashitar himself. He was enormous even by his species standards, his scales a deep black color that seemed to absorb light. His eyes glowed like yellow fire, and his voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Humans of Earth," the Emperor began, his words filled with rage and hatred. "I am Emperor Vashitar, supreme ruler of the Vraxan Empire. You have insulted my people and destroyed my ships through cowardice and trickery. For this crime, your entire species will be exterminated." The Emperor's image filled the display as he continued speaking. "I offer you one chance to die with honor. Surrender your planet immediately, and I will grant your people quick deaths. Refuse, and I will make your world burn for 1,000 years." The human response came not from a military commander or a president, but from what looked like an ordinary government office. An elderly woman sat behind a simple wooden desk with family photos and a small plant visible in the background. She looked more like someone's grandmother than the leader of a spacefaring civilization. "Emperor Vashitar," the woman said calmly, "I am President Nancy Foster. I am very sorry about what happened to your first fleet, but they attacked our people first. We were only defending ourselves." President Foster's voice was gentle and patient, like a teacher talking to an upset child. "We do not want to fight you. We would prefer to solve this problem through discussion and negotiation. Perhaps we can find a solution that works for everyone." "Emperor." Vashitar's roar of laughter shook the recording equipment. "Negotiation? Old woman, you face the combined might of 40,000 warships. Your primitive world cannot stand against the full power of the Vraxan Empire. What terms could worthless primitives like you possibly offer?" President Foster smiled sadly. "We are offering you the chance to leave with your fleets intact and your crews alive. We really do not want more people to die. But if you insist on attacking Earth, we will be forced to defend ourselves." The Emperor's eyes blazed with fury. "Then die, humans. All ships. Commence planetary bombardment. I want this world reduced to molten rock. Show these primitives the price of defying the Vraxan Empire." What happened next made every delegate in the council chamber gasp with amazement and fear. The 40,000 Vraxan ships opened fire all at once. The space around Earth became filled with more energy than most species had ever seen in one place. Plasma beams, laser cannons, particle weapons, and antimatter missiles all streaked toward the blue planet. The amount of firepower was so enormous that it created its own light, making Earth's solar system glow like a second sun. But as the massive wave of destruction approached Earth's atmosphere, something incredible happened. The planet itself seemed to come alive. Lines of energy began appearing around Earth, forming geometric patterns that covered the entire world. The planet's magnetic field, normally invisible, suddenly became visible as it strengthened beyond anything that should have been possible. The aurora that usually appeared only at the north and south poles spread across the entire planet, creating a glowing shell of protective energy. When the Vraxan weapons hit this barrier, they simply stopped. 40,000 ships worth of firepower struck the Earth's defenses and was absorbed completely. Not a single beam or missile made it through to the planet's surface. "This is impossible," whispered Counselor Nathara in the council chamber. "No planetary defense system could stop that much firepower." On the recording, a new voice came from Earth's surface. It was calm and professional, like someone reading the weather report. "This is Defense Coordinator Sam Mitchell speaking for Earth Defense Command," the voice said. "Emperor Vashitar, you are currently firing on a planetary defense grid that has been under construction for over 200 years. Every major city, every military base, and every orbital platform on our world is contributing to a unified magnetic field generated by our planet's core itself." The display showed technical readouts that made even the most advanced species in the council stare in wonder. The humans had not just built weapons or ships to defend themselves. They had turned their entire planet into a fortress. Every weapon system, every power plant, every piece of advanced technology on Earth is connected to this grid. Defense Coordinator Mitchell continued. You are not attacking a few human ships or stations. You are attacking our entire world. Working as one giant machine. Emperor Vashitar's voice came back, no longer confident but filled with confusion and growing fear. This is impossible. No species has this level of technology. How long have you been preparing for war? We have not been preparing for war, came the reply from Earth. We have been preparing to survive it. There is an important difference. The recording showed the space around Earth beginning to glow with accumulated energy. Every shot fired by the Vraxan fleet had been absorbed by the planetary defenses, but that energy had not disappeared. It was being stored and concentrated. But here is the truly important part, Defense Coordinator Mitchell said, his voice still calm and patient. Every shot you fire at us charges our defensive systems. You are not just failing to hurt us. You are giving us the power to respond. Beams of pure energy suddenly lanced out from Earth's surface. They were not weapons in any traditional sense, but rather focused applications of the same force that had protected the planet. Each beam was precisely targeted at a single Vraxan ship. The beams did not destroy the ships or kill their crews. Instead, they simply shut down every system on board. One by one, 40,000 Vraxan warships went dark and silent, floating helplessly in space around Earth. Your crews are unharmed, came the voice from Earth. Your ships are disabled but not destroyed. We could have killed everyone, but we chose not to. We prefer to save lives rather than take them. In the council chamber, Ambassador Zethkar paused the recording and looked around at the stunned faces of the other delegates. This is how the second and third fleets were defeated, he said quietly. Not through superior firepower, but through superior wisdom. The humans turned our own strength against us and then showed mercy when they could have shown none. General Vex Thul's 4 arms hung limply at his sides. His entire understanding of warfare had just been turned upside down. They could have destroyed everything, he whispered, but they chose to save lives instead. Dr. Helen Carter stood up from the human delegation. That is correct, General. We had the power to annihilate the entire Vraxan Empire in minutes, but we believe that every life has value, even the lives of those who attack us. The chamber remained silent as everyone tried to understand what they had just witnessed. The humans had not won through violence or superior weapons. They had won through preparation, intelligence, and ultimately through mercy. The holographic display continued, showing the aftermath of the battle around Earth. 40,000 Vraxan warships floated silently in space, their crews alive but their ships completely powerless. The blue planet hung peacefully in the center of the disabled fleet, its protective energy field still glowing softly around it. Emperor Vashitar's voice came through the communication channel, but now it sounded very different. The anger and confidence were gone, replaced by confusion and fear. What have you done to my ships? He demanded. My crews are reporting that nothing works. No engines, no weapons, no life support systems. President Nancy Foster appeared on the screen again, still sitting calmly in her simple office. Your life support systems are working fine, Emperor. We would never put innocent people in danger. But your weapons and engines have been temporarily shut down. We can restore them whenever you are ready to discuss peace. Peace? Emperor Vashitar's voice cracked. You have defeated the entire military might of my empire without firing a single shot. What kind of monsters are you? President Foster looked sad. We are not monsters, Emperor. We are just people who have learned some hard lessons about war and survival. Would you like to hear our story? In the council chamber, the alien delegates leaned forward in their seats. Everyone wanted to understand how the humans had developed such incredible abilities. How had a species that seemed so primitive become so powerful? Very well, Emperor Vashitar said on the recording. Tell me your story, human. Tell me how you learned to turn entire planets into weapons. President Foster smiled gently. It all started about 300 years ago, when we first learned that we were not alone in the universe. We discovered that the galaxy was full of different species, most of them much more advanced than we were. The display showed images of early human space exploration. Small, simple ships leaving Earth for the first time, meeting alien traders and diplomats. The humans looked excited and hopeful as they made contact with galactic civilization. At first, we were very excited. President Foster continued. We thought we would make friends with everyone and learn wonderful new things. But we quickly discovered that the galaxy was not a peaceful place. There were wars everywhere. Species fought each other for resources, territory, and power. The images changed to show battles between different alien fleets, planets burning, under orbital bombardment, entire species being wiped out by their enemies. The galaxy was beautiful, but it was also very dangerous. We realized that as newcomers, we were weak and vulnerable. Any of the established powers could have conquered or destroyed us easily. So we had to make a choice. We could try to build a military strong enough to fight everyone, or we could find another way to survive. Emperor Vashitar's voice was curious, now instead of angry. What other way? In the galaxy, only the strong survive. The weak are conquered or killed. That is what most species believe, President Foster agreed. But we humans have always been stubborn. We do not like being told that something is impossible. So we decided to prove that there was another way. The display showed human scientists and engineers working on massive construction projects, cities being rebuilt with strange new technology, space stations that looked different from anything other species had built. We spent 3 centuries preparing for the day when someone would try to conquer us. But instead of building bigger weapons, we built better defenses. Instead of learning how to destroy our enemies, we learned how to make our enemies destroy themselves. Dr. Helen Carter stood up in the council chamber and walked to the center of the room. May I explain the technical details? She asked President Foster's image. Of course, Dr. Carter, came the reply from the recording. Dr. Carter looked around, at all the alien delegates. The secret is not advanced weapons or powerful shields. The secret is understanding that every attack carries its own energy. When someone fires a weapon at you, they are actually giving you power. She gestured to the holographic display, which began showing diagrams of human defensive technology. Our scientists discovered how to capture and redirect any form of energy. Plasma beams, laser cannons, kinetic weapons, antimatter explosions. We can absorb them all and send them back where they came from. Counselor Nethera, the crystal being, made a sound like wind chimes. But this requires incredible amounts of power and computing ability. How do you coordinate such complex systems? That is the really clever part, Dr. Carter explained. We do not coordinate them at all. Every defensive system on every human world is completely independent, but they all follow the same simple rule: absorb incoming energy and reflect it back to its source. The display showed more diagrams illustrating how human defensive networks operated. Each system was like a mirror, bouncing attacks back at the people who had fired them. This means that the stronger our enemies are, the more dangerous it becomes to attack us. A small raiding party might disable one of our ships, but a massive fleet like yours gives us enough power to shut down every vessel you have. General Vexthul spoke from his seat, his voice filled with amazement. You turned our own strength into our weakness. The more ships we brought, the more helpless we became. Exactly, Dr. Carter nodded. And the beautiful thing about this system is that it only works for defense. We cannot use it to attack anyone. We can only protect ourselves and respond to aggression. Ambassador Zethkar, who had been silent during this explanation, finally spoke. That is why I came here to warn everyone. The humans are not just technologically superior. They have found a way to make war itself obsolete. He stood up and faced the other delegates. Do you not see what this means? For thousands of years, we have all believed that military strength comes from the ability to destroy your enemies. But the humans have proven that true strength comes from making it impossible for enemies to destroy you. The recording continued, as President Foster spoke to Emperor Vashistar. Now you understand our situation, Emperor. We do not want to conquer anyone. We do not want to rule the galaxy. We just want to be left alone to live our lives in peace. But what if we leave and come back with even more ships? Emperor Vashitar asked. What if we bring 1,000,000 vessels instead of 40,000? President Foster's smile was patient and kind. Then you would give us enough power to disable 1,000,000 ships instead of 40,000. The mathematics are very simple, Emperor. The more force you use against us, the more force we can use to defend ourselves. The Emperor was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was very small. "What do you want from us?" "We want you to go home," President Foster said gently. "We want you to tell your people that the war is over. We want you to rebuild your empire and live in peace. And we want you to remember that there is always another way to solve problems. Besides fighting." The recording showed the Vraxan ships slowly powering back up as Earth restored their systems. One by one, they formed into groups and prepared to return to their home territory. Emperor Vashitar's flagship was the last to leave. "Humans," the Emperor said before ending the communication. "I do not understand you, but I will remember this day for the rest of my life." Ambassador Zethkar stopped the recording and looked around the council chamber. "That was 6 weeks ago," he said. "Since then, the Vraxan Empire has withdrawn from all disputed territories. We have ended our wars with other species. We have begun focusing on peaceful trade and exploration instead of conquest." He turned to face Dr. Carter. "The humans could have destroyed us completely. They had the power to wipe out our entire civilization. But instead they chose to teach us a lesson about the futility of aggression." Dr. Carter nodded. "Violence only creates more violence. But mercy and wisdom can create understanding and peace." One by one, the other delegates began to speak. General Vexthol was the first. "The Korthak Federation withdraws all territorial claims in human space. We also request permission to study human defensive technologies for peaceful purposes only. Commander." Zixtel of the Nebula Federation clicked his metal claws together nervously. "The Nebula Federation also withdraws all claims and requests a formal peace treaty with humanity." Admiral Corthes of the Deep Space Alliance made her whale song sound. "The Deep Space Alliance declares human space to be neutral territory. We will not allow any member species to attack human worlds." The declarations continued around the chamber as species after species pledged to leave humanity alone. But Dr. Carter raised her hand for attention. "We appreciate these gestures," she said, "but we want something more than just peace treaties. We want to share our knowledge with anyone who is interested in learning better ways to resolve conflicts." Scholar Venthiron of the Academic Collective stood up excitedly. "You would teach other species your defensive technologies?" "We would teach you the principles behind them," Dr. Carter replied. "How to absorb and redirect energy instead of generating it. How to make aggression self-defeating. How to turn potential enemies into confused friends." She looked around the Idor chamber at all the different alien faces. The galaxy has spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war. Perhaps it is time to start perfecting the art of peace. As the council session ended, Commander Lisa Grant leaned over to Captain Jake. "Morrison, think they actually learned anything from all this?"